So Nathan, moving on
Absolutely.
to you and Hilcorp, and certainly speaking of a company in transition and transformation amidst an industry in transformation. Hilcorp, as you already pointed out, had its biggest acquisition in 2020 related to BP Alaskan oil producing properties. And then the pandemic hit, and then you needed to continue to operate. And so, can you share why it was so essential for you to stand up a COVID-19 testing program in that context?
Sure. So yeah, we closed that acquisition midsummer, $5.6 billion, approximately 1,000 employees, plus everything that comes with that, contractors, support staff, um, you know, wide-reaching impacts. And we also did that primarily in one of our most remote operating locations, which is the North Slope of Alaska. So it's about an hour and a half plane ride north of Anchorage on the Beaufort Sea. So not really convenient, right? You can't run out and grab stuff or pick stuff up. And so in the middle of this huge acquisition and just our normal operations, several areas that we operated across the lower 48 and including in Alaska had state regulations in terms of what their guidelines were for COVID. And so a lot of those employees spend only 2 weeks at a time in Alaska. We have a ton that live in Alaska full time, but we also have several that commute from the lower 48 to Alaska. And upon arrival in Anchorage at the Anchorage airport, you had to show proof of a negative COVID test. And if anybody recalls, sort of at the beginning of this pandemic and through the summer, as things started to spike for the first time, that was a challenge in and of itself, right? It was not easy to get a COVID test. And if it was easy for you, you were looking at a week turnaround time. So one of their regulations was that it had to be within 72 hours of arrival to Alaska. So it was kind of a scramble for us to figure out how we were going to make sure that we could get our employees to their work location to continue our operations, make sure that that investment we just made was going to be paid back to us, right? And so we went on that search for that perfect partner for COVID-19 testing.
Thank you. And so, knowing about your story, it was also really interesting for me to understand that you actually, before you started to work with Sterling on the management and oversight of your COVID-19 testing program, you were working with a different provider. However, you thought that amongst all this change and change management, you wanted to make a change to Sterling. So can you talk about like what precipitated the need to take on more change amongst all this, pretty business critical change?
Sure, right. Yeah, so obviously, we had a plan in place for all of that change. We didn't necessarily, I think, probably like most companies, have a plan in place to handle a pandemic. And I think a lot of HR professionals are sort of finding themselves in that position that they've become pandemic experts when, they had zero desire to develop that skill. And that was the same for us. And so, we had a lot of medical resources. We have medical resources on the slope and throughout the lower 48, right? But this COVID testing created sort of a unique situation. And so we found a provider that could provide us with COVID tests that we could send to them for testing, but they required supervision by our staff. And at the time we had one nurse and one contract nurse on staff full time, and they're based here in the Houston office. And I can't get them to Virginia, where we don't have operations, but we have somebody that lives there and needs to test before they fly to Alaska. And so that need for us to provide supervision for testing didn't meet our business needs. And so when we got in contact with Sterling, the sales team and the customer service support team there, the solution that you guys had was perfect for us because it's a test kit that comes in a box, the size of a VHS tape. I'm aging myself a little bit there, but everybody knows about what size that is.
I know that.
Okay, perfect. And we can hand that out to employees, and they can do it on demand. They open the kit, everything they need is inside of it. It instructs them on how to meet with a provider that's going to supervise their sample collection, and then everything's in that kit to ship it off. And the other thing that Sterling provided to us was the ability to have some insight into that process, right? Where the test was, what the test results were, that we had the proper authorization from the employee that they were going to be able to share those test results with us. So most of the times employees were real happy to get their test results to them and report them, but in the event that we had to go looking for them, we could find them, or I can bug Beth at any time and ask her to go find them for me, or tell me where they are. And so we run extremely lean. It's one of the reasons we're able to be so successful. We don't have a lot of extra staff, but in that, when it came to something like this, we needed extra help, and Sterling was able to provide that for us.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, and I certainly recall the early days of the program, you making it really crystal clear that making the program very easy for you to operate was essential. And I think I shared with you, you were amongst our first, and we knew the business criticality. It was like we had to absolutely get it right. And I know Beth and a few others have literally babysat every single order to make sure it was perfect for you. So I'm certainly glad based on your feedback it's working out. You've been a phenomenal partner. And Nathan, one of the things that would be great if you could share is, we're really excited to work with you in a broader sense. And can you share a little bit about your decision as well as the rationale for that decision to broaden our relationship?
Sure. So, as we kind of got into the COVID-19 testing administration and partnered with the team at Sterling, started to see really essentially, the service we got. And at the same time, we're starting to see things because of the pandemic break down with our previous background check provider. Turnaround times were going through the roof. At a time when we couldn't afford those types of delays, and then also the customer service had started to lack as well. And so that's when we started having the conversations with Sterling as well about moving our background check services over to you guys. And so, for us, again, customer service is highly important. Today is my first day back in the office after a week being out. One of my first emails yesterday before I even got back was to Beth about some stuff, and had answers before I even made it back in. And so with the issues we're having for background check screening, it was pretty clear that was a good match. To add on top of that, the pricing was more so competitive than what we were paying at the previous background check provider. And for the first time ever in the 7 or 8 years that I've been managing the process for Hilcorp, the vendor, being Sterling, said, let's look at this from more of a strategic standpoint. Why are you doing these types of background checks? Why are you checking this? Why are you checking this? And where are there areas to make improvements and streamline the process? And that was kind of refreshing from a vendor perspective to have somebody bring that to our attention and say, you could be saving time and money. You're not using some of these things that you're checking, but you're paying for them. So why keep doing that? And so again, just a reiteration that we've made the right choice from definitely a partner from a COVID perspective, and very excited from a partnership on the background check perspective also.
Well, as you can imagine, of course, that's music to our ears. And as I've said to Margaret and Jamie throughout the years, we never rest on our laurels. So we're only going to continue to raise the bar. So thank you so much for your commentary.
Absolutely, yeah.
Thanks everyone for the discussion.